Well, let's go ahead and get started here, you guys. Again, welcome to our webinar today. Special thanks to Arctic IT, who is the host of today's webinar. Our presenters are Sue Kim and Philip Jackson from Arctic IT. This session will be recorded at travelhub.com. You will also all get a copy of the recording via email tomorrow afternoon-ish. And we are just announcing a Travel Hub Community Symposium that we are hosting in January, and information on that is also on our website. So with that, I am going to stop sharing and turn it over to our Arctic IT team. Anybody on the call has questions, be sure to use that chat and reach out.
All right. Well, thank you, Michelle. I appreciate that. Hello, everyone. Welcome. I wanted to say I noticed on the attendee list today that I've had a few conversations with some of you all in regards to handling your technology challenges for your tribe. And I'm so happy that you're all joining us today. So welcome to our webinar on how to enhance IT operations with limited resources. My name is Sue Kim, and I am the sales executive over here at Arctic IT, and I manage and help with everything, all things travel platforms with our new and existing clients. And joining me today is Philip Jackson. He is our Chief Information Officer, and he is also a member of the Choctaw Tribe. So thank you for joining us today. So what we'll go ahead and discuss, we're going to discuss some obstacles that IT is facing for tribal nations. Also, we'll talk about quick wins for your IT department and with limited budget. We also will present how managed services can help bridge the IT gaps. And we will also touch on who is the best fit for managed services. We'll also end the presentation with a wrap up with Arctic IT partnership with tribes, and then we'll save the best for last, which is our questions and answers. Feel free to go ahead and place your questions in the question box, as Michelle mentioned earlier. Thank you.
Great. Well, I'll get started and talk a little bit about some challenges we see in today's IT department. So I'm privileged enough to get to go around the country, meet with different tribes, and we see a lot of the same challenges that tribes have, and kind of want to talk to that today, let you know that if these are some of the challenges you have, you're not alone in that. Again, we see this day in, day out with different tribes we meet with. One of those is we feel like leadership gets pulled into routine tasks. So a lot of IT directors and IT leaders, CIOs, VPs of IT all get pulled into tasks that are less strategic in nature and more just operational. Kind of miss out on a chance to focus on organizational goals and things that you want to do for IT because you're really pulled into those kind of mundane day-to-day tasks. So we see that happen a lot. And then we know the pace of change is really, really hard to keep up with. We'll talk a little bit later, more about that later in some slides, but man, it's just hard to keep up with everything that's going on, and IT leaders don't have that opportunity to really sit down and focus on what's changing and how that impacts them and their tribe. And then this is really an important one. It's kind of a silent one, right? Security threats going undetected in your environment. Again, we're fortunate to do a lot of work in tribes, and almost always when we've been engaged to do some kind of project or something like that, we get in there and find out there's really something that needs to be addressed that they didn't know existed. It's kind of one of those silent things. And if you don't pay attention, those things can come back and haunt you and cause lots of downtime and stress related to that. So we see that happen a lot. So we talked about the pace of change. I don't know how many people are keeping up with generative AI, but ChatGPT is the fastest growing technology that we've ever seen. So things are moving really fast. You know, what kinds of things is your organization doing to address the governance of generative AI? What's okay for people to use and not use? And then how how can it benefit your organization? That kind of stuff that people just don't really have time to focus on. If you look at this table in the lower right, you can see these IT jobs didn't even exist 10 years ago. So these are jobs that weren't even around, to show you just how fast things are moving. And then just think about 90% of the data in the world was generated in the past 2 years. It's a lot of data that all of us are having to have governance and security and make sure none of it leaks out, and make sure that it doesn't get in the wrong hands. And at the same time, make sure that the data that people need to make decisions is getting in the right hands. So we've seen some layoffs, especially this year, but I can tell you it is really hard still to staff for IT. Again, this is probably one of the biggest things as I go around and I visit with different tribes about some of their technology challenges, especially as you move out from bigger metropolitan areas. You find that it's really difficult to attract the right IT talent, to retain them, to train them, all of that stuff. We see that there's still a really high demand for talent, and yet we're having trouble across the board, every organization, of getting the right people. You can see here that, the shortage of IT candidates is still a concern. Salary requirements are hard to meet because there's such demand. And then, a lot of these candidates don't have the right credentials, or they don't have the right experience. So that there may be people applying, but they're just not, experienced enough to help support your organization.
Yeah, and Philip, I've noticed that when I'm speaking to tribes, they're having issues on hiring. And I would say in the last 30 days, I have spoke to 4 tribes that are going through that issue currently.
Yeah, it really is a problem. And I know that many tribes want to hire people and just can't seem to get the right talent. So
yes,
it's definitely a problem that
it's a huge struggle.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Sue.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you kind of deal with that staffing issue? There's 2. One we just talked about is hire. It does seem like, when you get on that hire bandwagon of trying to hire enough staff, that as you get them trained, and we saw that demand for talent, they leave. So you kind of constantly on this treadmill of having to hire people, train them, teach them about your environment, and then once you feel like they're really starting to get productive, then they move on to a different role. The average IT person stays in their role for just about 18 months, which is really about the time you're hoping they're hitting their stride and getting productive. So that constant treadmill of having to hire people, train people, and bring them up is a risk to you, because you're not able, again, to focus strategically on the things you want to focus on. And then some people have outsourced to a managed service provider. I think a lot of managed service providers want to come in and do everything. They want to take everything away from you, and you do lose a little bit of that personal touch, or that face-to-face that you might like to have with your end users and stuff like that. So.
All right, Philip, we'll talk about next is some quick wins for your IT department with a limited budget. You may have a limited budget on some of these tribes that I speak to.
Yep. Well, again, you're not alone in this. Many tribes have limited budgets that they're trying to work with and solve a bunch of problems, maybe with not a lot of resources. And so what I wanted to do today was talk through some things that a managed service provider might do for you, but certainly something you could start on or do yourself if you had the time and the resources to start looking into that. And I think it's a lot of these are high impact. They can really save you some money. The first things I want to talk to is, I remember Arctic IT has been on our cloud journey of moving things to the cloud since I got here about 5 years ago. But I remember an architect from Microsoft telling me this, that VMs in your environment are your most expensive resources. And I've never really forgot that. In terms of if there is a SaaS solution to maybe something that you're having on a VM or physical server today, look at that, especially email service. If you haven't migrated your email service to a cloud-based M365, really you should be looking at that, not only from just the resources on site that it takes, but it takes a lot of management to manage an email server. And Microsoft does it very well day in, day out. So look at other solutions. In fact, we have one solution that still sits on a VM today. I was meeting with internal IT, and we looked and saw that there's a cloud-based version of it in the last 6 months. So now we can move that to a SaaS solution and not have those VMs. And the second item kind of goes hands in hand with that. Is you need to really think about consolidating your servers or VMs. Again, they're really expensive resources. When we're talking about on-prem or in the cloud, you're paying for those VMs to be running all of the time. Cloud-based ones are, by the hour, but there's the silent support cost of anything that you have on premise. If you're older like me and been in this industry for a long time, then that we used to have physical servers, and we were careful and trying to load up as much as we could on the physical servers. And then VMs came along, and we're like, oh, we can just put VMs everywhere, and so they just multiplied all over the place. And I think we have not really taken a look and seen where we can consolidate that stuff, because you can save both on the support cost of trying to maintain all those VMs, and at the same time, there's a lot of licensing costs, especially when you talk about SQL Server and some of those other things. Is there licensing costs you can save by consolidating some of those servers or VMs? And while it's not on here, if you have cloud-based resources, I've noticed, again, when we start talking to people, that they had not looked at reserved instances inside of Azure or Azure Hybrid Benefit. That is to say, if you're paying for a Windows license that you've bought and maybe have under software assurance or something like that, you don't have to repay for that license inside of Azure. So look for Azure Hybrid Benefit, or look at reserved instances. They're typically available in 1 and 3 year increments. I typically just do 1 year because I don't know what's going to happen in 3 years, but definitely you can save some good money if you're not taking advantage of Azure Hybrid Benefit or reserved instances in your cloud. You can also reduce your support costs. So here's ways that you can save money. I know Arctic IT has done several webinars on Zero Trust. If you go out to the YouTube channel, you can find some of those past webinars. But really, if you're not doing Zero Trust, you need to be looking into that. But some of those things around Zero Trust will also save you support costs. We implement Autopilot for all of our customers. For those of you who don't know what Autopilot is, like the old days of having images for machines or something like that, except this is based in the cloud. So you can boot up a brand new machine and have all of the applications just automatically come down to the workstation without a technician having to handcraft that new machine. All of them get deployed exactly the same with the tools that they need for that department, and you're ready to go a lot quicker. So that will help reduce support costs, as well as we all know users call a lot around passwords and needing their passwords reset. Are you using self-service password reset? And if you haven't looked at that, I used to think, well, that sounds like it's really a scary proposition, but it's actually more secure than letting a technician password reset someone, because a lot of times on the phone they can't validate that that is actually the person who wants their password reset, and it's actually some bad actor asking for somebody's password to be reset. If you look at breaches, it's often around that. So look into self-service password reset. It's a win-win. So it saves on support costs, lets your users self-service, and really is more secure. You really should be looking at outsourced training for your organization. Again, as I visit different tribes across the country, I see a real need for training, and that's a burden on your support staff to have to do kind of, productivity training in Word or Teams or whatever. So look for training so that maybe you have a little less calls coming into the support center for you. And then you could also look at low footprint devices. We've done a lot of Azure virtual desktops or Windows 365 desktops. Those are similar. They live in the cloud and really are easy to deploy, quick to deploy. You can scale up and scale down as you need to. Maybe you have seasonal workers or something like that that need a desktop. Really good ideas for kind of dynamic environments. As we kind of do projects for tribes, we often kind of do a reconciliation of licensing. And what we find is that many times tribes are paying for licenses that they're not utilizing. Either they're underutilizing a license that they have, or they have too many and haven't, looked to see what users should have been offboarded and a license taken away. Sometimes someone will disable an end user's account, but then not remove the license from it. So you're still paying for that licensing. So you really should be looking at your licensing, making sure you understand the new commerce experience from Microsoft, what that means for you and your organization, but making sure you're only paying for those licenses that you need. Then look at a tenant review and get some answers to these questions. Are there Microsoft 365 services that you can use to replace on-premise services? So really take a look at your M365, whether you're using Business Premium or E3 or E5. Look at all the services there and see what might be duplicative of stuff that you have on-prem, where maybe you could retire that. And it's something you're already paying for today inside of M365. They continue to offer more and more services there. So just take a look and make sure that you're getting the max value out of that.
Yeah, and Philip, I noticed, sorry, I noticed that, recently I'm working with a tribe on their Zero Trust as well as their licensing audit, and they did not know about, that is available under the managed services umbrella for a licensing audit. I was talking to an IT director. He used this example. It's, with all these subscriptions like Netflix, Hulu, and all those other ones, you have them, you don't realize you have them, and you're paying for them each month. And then you go, wait a minute, we got to really take a look at this. But he did not know, he didn't have the time or the, time to go ahead and invest in that. So that's something that is very, very valuable. I noticed, I think a lot of IT teams, in the tribal arena do not know that is available. And then the tenant review is extremely important as well. And I think this is valuable. And I'm as I'm talking to or having these conversations with those IT teams, they're mentioning this. They did not know it fell under the umbrella, and then also the Zero Trust, because I've talked to a few tribes that have been ransomed, not just once, almost, I could count the times on my hand within the past couple of years, and that takes a toll, and it's not something that you all want to deal with. So yes, I wanted to bring that up, that we understand what you guys are dealing with, and it is frustrating, but we can help you.
Yep. So yeah, all good call outs. Thank you, Sue. And as it relates to M365 and kind of this whole tenant review and these bullet points here, there's a lot of security tools that are available in M365, Microsoft Defender services that you may not be leveraging, and you may be paying for a third party like antivirus or something when you can, again, some of our customers, we would have them create an inventory of what third party services they were using. And a lot of those were duplicative of what they were paying for in M365. So we're just like, you should cancel this contract and cancel that contract. And then, double paying for cloud storage. I see this all the time. People paying for maybe Dropbox or Box.net or Adobe or something like that when they have lots of cloud storage available in OneDrive and SharePoint that they're paying for today. So, those are areas that you can save. I think with the consumerization of IT, you see a lot of departments doing this on their own without getting the governance of IT. So you really should be looking for that shadow IT and where your organization's spending money that it shouldn't. And then we see a lot of this recently, a cybersecurity insurance assessment. Used to, you could just get cybersecurity insurance by checking a box. Now, carriers are a lot more selective of who they're going to insure and what your premium is. And so if you're not doing things like MFA, then your premium is going to be higher because of that. Or you may have difficulty getting insurance.
All right. Thanks, Philip. Valuable information. So next, we're going to go ahead and present how managed services can help bridge the IT gaps. And then we'll also touch on, who is the best fit for managed services.
Yeah.
Philip?
Okay. Yeah, let's talk a little bit. So we saw this slide similarly before, but let's just talk about how managed services can kind of help with this stuff. One thing that managed services does is have, a help desk or support center that can really improve your response time when your staff is stressed and has lots of tickets or requests coming in from end users. Being able to flex and be able to, scale those tickets are really important, something that a managed service provider can help with. And then really develop and retain your team. So a lot of what a managed service provider should be doing is the basics for you so that your team then can elevate themselves into more roles that are strategic for your organization and are unique to your organization. And usually that makes people happier. They can develop their skills and you get to keep them. And the longer you keep them, the more value they add. All while letting you kind of, again, get more strategic and not have to deal with the day-to-day. And then finally, Sue mentioned it, day in, day out, we see people who have not paid the proper attention to security just because they do have a lot of other things that they are trying to manage. And security is one of those silent things that will come up and bite you later if you're not doing it. So having a trusted security team of professionals is really beneficial to your organization. And then here, I'm not going to read all of these to you, but things that managed service providers can do for you. Everything from network management, doing that end user training we talked about before, being a 24/7 help desk, security, governance. We have someone on our team who helps drive those strategic conversations with the tribal council or anyone else that you kind of need support to kind of explain what these initiatives do and why they're important. So a managed service provider can help with all of these, including license management and trying to save you money on some of the licensing things. So if you were going to engage a managed service provider, these are things that I think you definitely need to be asking them and checking with them and seeing, one, do they have experience working with tribal organizations? It is unique working with tribes, and I think a lot of just commercial businesses don't have that experience and don't really understand the uniqueness that can come with working with tribes. Can they talk about tribal data sovereignty and what that means and how are they going to address those kinds of questions? So making sure your managed service provider understands those things is really important. And then, we all have staff that does a good job for us. How does that existing IT staff fit into your service offering? We talked about a lot of managed service providers want to come in and just take over everything, but maybe you have some existing staff or you're providing opportunities for those people in your tribe, and those people need to help train and help be able to develop inside your organization. So how is your existing staff going to fit with a managed service provider? So here's some value that's provided by managed service providers. If you go out and hire all of the people that we've talked about today, security professionals, Microsoft Cloud tenant professionals, architects, licensed specialists, all of that, it's a lot of money and a lot that would be hard for most tribes to absorb all of those different roles. Versus hiring a managed service provider, you really have this one monthly fee that goes along with it, and you get all of these professionals to help you in a fractional way. So you get security professionals. You have someone looking over your cloud app security. If you've not spent any time in the Microsoft Secure Score and Defender for cloud and stuff, you can see that stuff can get really overwhelming. And unless you have a professional who sees that day in, day out, you really don't know what to do with the alerts and the things that it's recommending. But a managed service provider can help you with all of those things. So what makes a good fit for managed service providers on the tribes? One is those staffing challenges. Again, we talked about, we see it all of the time that tribes are having difficulty getting that talent and retaining them. 2, operational size. Again, because you really, as a tribe, have a lot of IT services that you're offering, it's hard to have all the experts that you need. And so, less than 600 employees, maybe it's just the tribal government side, or maybe it's tribal enterprise side, or where they lack a large in-house IT team, then you get a lot of experts when you hire a managed service provider, because people like Arctic IT hire those experts specific to that particular technology. And this kind of goes hands in hand. You have a broad range of IT services, from help desk support to network configuration, cloud, M365. Maybe you have compliance requirements, CGIS data, or some other kind of protected data that you need experts to help you make sure that you're securing it and protecting it in the right way. Value recognition, just understanding that there is value in having a provider who understands tribal operations, has all of these advanced certifications and knowledge, that there's value in that for you and your tribe. And then finally, we're just going to drive this point home because, again, we see it all the time, is, are you security conscious? Do you understand the importance of making sure that the day-to-day things are being done, that vulnerability management is being done, that patching and security is being done, and that you're looking over any alerts or something in your environment that may cause you pain later on.
Philip, I had a question that came in specifically about managed services. Did you want to answer that now, or do you want me to?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, and it's asking, can you give me an example of how you could provide a managed services for us now? We would be included in the tribes under 600, whatever you noted on the under 600.
Yep.
Excuse me, under 600 employees.
Yep. So we have a lot of tribes that we work with that size. It's actually a good fit for us. We provide. Today we can do most of everything we need to do remotely. And so we would come on site, we would do an assessment of your environment, sit down with you and your leaders. Again, we really like to go through and look at what services you're using and see where we might be able to save you money, where it might be duplicative of something else that you have. And then we would onboard you to the M365 services, have a 24/7 help desk. And then for those rare instances that we need some help from your staff, for instance, maybe rebooting a router or something like that, we would just engage your team and then say, here's something that we need your help with. But I think what's really unique is our clients are seeing the value in what we provide on the security front. That's really difficult for them to get a lot of times in these little more remote areas that's not next to a major metropolitan city. So I think it's a real win-win for everybody.
Thanks, Philip. Philip, we have about less than 10 minutes, so we'll go ahead.
Okay.
Yep. So I'll go through these quickly because of our time, and we also want to leave time for any other questions that you all may have. So I just want to let you all know that we have very strong connections, as we talked about, within the tribal sector. Tribes have put their trust in Arctic IT for over 15 years. We have experience within 85 tribal entities across the U.S. Also want to mention, this is very important. We're 100% Native owned by SBA 8A, Certified Alaska Native Corporation, and it's a subsidiary of Doyon Limited. And as we talked about, not just managed services, we have other tribal focused solutions, such as our tribal platforms that includes enrollment, tribal court, family services, distribution payments, housing, education, as well as the community portal. And then we also can assist with tribal finance. So we definitely have those focused solutions available. And just give you an idea of our experience. I also want to mention, we also have employees on our team from various tribes. As I mentioned, Philip's from Choctaw Nation, and we have other employees. I'm just giving you another example on Lumbee tribe as well.
So talk a little bit about Arctic IT's managed service called Arctic Care 365. And so again, you can see by this chart, what we try to do is let IT management focus on the things in their tribe that is unique to their tribe, so they're not getting pulled down into the weeds like we talked about. You can see where Arctic IT kind of fits in the middle, working with your users alongside your IT staff to help provide support. So we're there just to make sure that your users are taken care of, working alongside your IT staff, maybe to help train them where necessary. There's something that maybe we can help them learn or something like that. But what you get is really these security professionals, M365 professionals, cloud architects, licensing specialists, all of that come alongside when you hire Arctic IT for managed services. I'm not going to read all of these, but you can see the kinds of things that we do. Again, a lot of these will be very security focused, because that's really what we have to do day in, day out, is make sure your environment is secure, from endpoint management, vulnerability, looking at what's going on in your environment, training your users, doing cloud to cloud backups. All of these are the types of services that we provide for you so that you don't have to worry about them. You just let us take care of these things for you. And I'm really, really proud of how we onboard. There was a question earlier about kind of what managed services look like. I'm really proud of this chart, and I'm really proud of what we do. Remember, we talked about that zero trust kind of environment. Our onboarding, and this is different than really any other managed service provider, really takes you down that zero trust path a long ways. So we'll make sure that if you're not using multi-factor authentication, we'll help that happen with every one of your users. If we need to contact them by phone, we'll get on the phone with them and help them set it up. We do that self-service password reset I talked about. We join all of the endpoints to Azure natively and migrate those user profiles to Azure AD. We hold a security posture meeting with you and your team to make sure that the security defaults that we put in place for your organization is what your expectations are and how you want your security to look from a security footing and posture meeting. If you have on-prem resources, we're going to onboard those into Azure Arc, use some log analytics to trap all of those, all that telemetry around security and what's going on in your environment, and then implement any anti-phishing, anti-spam policies. There's a ton of policies to configure an M365. And often we do this type of work as project-based work for some people. But as an Arctic Care managed service provider, we just do that out of the box for you. So I think it's a really, really valuable resource. That is to say, when we walk away after doing an onboarding, if we were, just doing onboarding, your environment is way more secure than when we walked in.
All right. Thank you, Philip. I appreciate that. So I wanted to go ahead and point out, I mean, we appreciate your time. That is a lot of information we provided. But if you'd like to learn more, there is a link, and if you don't have time to go ahead and get the link, please let me know. I can go ahead and send you more information in regards to managed services, any of our offerings. Always here to help get that information over to you. Thanks, Michelle. She has put up my email. I appreciate that. So I wanted to thank you all and for joining us today. Michelle, I mean, do we have time for any questions, or did anything come through the chat box?
Oh yeah, we have lots of time. We can answer any questions. We did have one that came in. It says, if we are interested in a security assessment, how does that work? Do you come on site or do you conduct these remotely?
It just depends on the environment. We've done both before. So we will be happy to do a security assessment. Tenant assessments we can do definitely remotely. If we were looking at a larger scope of everything on-prem, we might want to come on site and visit with you, but definitely we have the capability to do both and have done both in the past. We just went last week to do one on site for someone. Yes. So whatever works best for you and your tribe.
And how does that work when you guys, specifically for a security assessment, are you meeting with the IT team? Are you meeting with the council? Are you meeting with, like, you know what I mean? What would that look like for a tribe?
We'll start with the IT team most often and just kind of talk through, what kinds of things they're doing with their security. Then we'll run some tools and we'll put our security professionals inside their M365 environment, because again, they do this day in, day out, so they know exactly where to go to look to see what kinds of things you have configured in your environment that might leave you susceptible to risk. At the end of the security assessment, we produce a report and then can help you navigate any conversations that you might need to have with tribal council and educate on why these things are important, why you need to do these things, so that you're not left susceptible. This is not a scare tactic at all. I mean, I just tell you, like, we almost inevitably, we turn out stuff when we go in of like, this is something really you need to address quickly, or you're going to find yourself in a bad situation.
And then I wanted to touch base and see if anybody else on the call, had any information on this or had seen this also. But, at TribalNet this year, we heard just from talking to people, mentioning about how hard it is to get staff within their, casino IT department, and even more difficult to find, somebody who's tribal native and have those on, on their IT staff. So I've seen quite a few tribes and solution providers working together to put together, symposiums for students or different programs together. So I think that's really cool that people are like, understanding that and noticing that and seeing that and like working together to make that, a priority, because, it will affect everybody eventually. And so to see people working together on that is really, really great. So I didn't have any other questions besides those two that came in. So if there's not anything else that I'm seeing in the chat right now, do you guys have anything you'd like to wrap up on?
No, thank you so much for letting us present today. And if you have any questions, please let me know. There's like definitely ways that you can be saving money right away if you look at some of that stuff. I think you can save your tribe some money if you start digging in a little bit.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, and we feel free to go ahead and reach out to both myself as well as Philip if you have any questions. Like if you think of something after the webinar, because that happens. I do it all the time. So feel free to go ahead and email us and let us know. More than willing to help and talk about any challenges, issues you may be having or maybe coming up, who knows, or plans for the future. We'll be more than happy to help.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. You know, Arctic is a great partner for us. We see you guys at all of our events and working with tribes. So I would definitely encourage anybody, if you have questions, make sure to reach out to Sue, to Philip, or even just give us a call if you need their information. We definitely have that on hand. And if you're in the Southwest region, Arctic is sponsoring our regional event there in at Gila River, Chandler, Arizona. So if you're in that area, make sure you sign up. It's free to tribes. So you can meet the staff there. If you're available.
Yes, so. I will be there.
Oh, cool. I'll see you there, Sue. All right, guys. On that, everybody, again, thanks for coming. Oh, you're in Oklahoma too. Oh, cool.
Yes, and I'll be there again.
Oh, me too. We can travel together. Awesome. You guys, I'll have a great day and we'll see you soon. And Sue, I'll see you in Arizona.
Yes.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.